Hi, Keely. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really, really excited to chat with you today. We have known each other for a little while, sort of from a distance, but we did meet that one time, which was amazing.
Yeah.
With little Remi, your beautiful 2.5-year-old girl who is deaf.
Yes.
And your journey has been an interesting one as well. And I love that we're sort of sharing different stories. And we were just talking about this before we went on air, how everyone's story is so different, but also there's so much value in that and actually getting to understand the different complexities and I guess the diverse journeys and trajectories that we're all on, yet we're all unified as well. And so I love that we get to highlight your story and your experience. And because obviously Remi is your first child, and so that's obviously quite a whirlwind for your first. I know a lot of families have had their deaf or hard of hearing child further down the line of kids, and so they've already had a bit of a shake up with parenting, but to sort of come out of the gate and have all of this happen, you know, first time being a mum, but also then just having to navigate such a crazy world. Let's start there and just you sharing the moment you first learned about Remi and her deafness, and I guess what was going on in your head and what that was like, and just, yeah, let us know.
It was such a surreal experience. It's so funny, even like thinking back to that time, what I know now versus what I know then, you just have such a different outlook. I cannot believe how naive I was, I guess, looking back at that time. I had a really traumatic birth experience with Remi, and in the hospital, she essentially failed, the newborn hearing screen. I think they did it like 3 or 4 times. Like they were pretty persistent. And I just remember like I never even thought about the newborn hearing screen before. I remember I was like taking photos because I was like, oh my God, look at her. She's so cute. She looks like with the little headphones on. And I was like, this is so, I have like 1,000 photos of the first like 3 tests they did. It's kind of mortifying looking back now. Because I was like, oh my God, like she's so cute. Now she's done about 8,000 hearing tests since then. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, so she failed or whatever several times. And I remember every single nurse, midwife, orderly, whatever came into my room. The time was like, oh, babe, like C-section babies always fail. Like you had a really bad birth. Like it's just, she'd be full of fluid. You'll come back, like it'll be fine. She's like, don't think about it. And I remember I even had this one nurse because at one point I was a bit like, oh, like, is this a bit weird? Like it failed, like, and she was like, and I was probably, baby blues crying, whatever. And she like literally sat me down. She was like, they all fail. It's not a big deal. Like, don't even think about it. She's like, you just need to go home, rest, recover, just put this completely out of your mind, focus on you and your baby and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I feel so much better now. Oh, I look back and I'm like, oh, like, but yeah, so I went home, never didn't even think about it. Again, hindsight now, I used to put so much trust in doctors, nurses, things like that. I have a very different opinion on it all now. I wouldn't put so much trust in them and take their word as gold anymore.
I think as well, that experience that you've had is so much more common than it should be. You know that the nurses and the midwives and whoever's dealing with that situation, well intended, but it actually causes families not to come back and get their children tested with the ABR and the official ABR at the hospital. They actually it just prolongs that time that the child doesn't have language. So
My opinion now is your only recommendation should be like, how can I support you? Do you want me to help you make that appointment? Are you feeling a bit overwhelmed at the moment? Why don't I jump on a call and make the appointment for you? That way it's done and you don't have to think about it. And even if you want to say, oh, most of the time it's totally fine or whatever, but I just don't even think that's necessary to say because but they're like, their excuse to me was they didn't want to worry me in case there was nothing. And I was like, but don't you think that like if I went in and I got the test done and it all came back great, then it's like, yeah, I could go move on with my life and that's somebody who gets to just forget all about it. Versus what about the people who go into that test and then have this life-changing experience? Like you're really hurting those people. It was wild. But I just remember I was super, super lucky. I had an amazing maternal health nurse. You probably see them like every couple of days at the start, and then it starts to get a bit longer. So I think I went to Remi's like 6 week little checkup. And my maternal health nurse was so lovely. And she was like, oh, yeah, you seem to be doing well, kind of, not really, but, anyway. She was like, oh, I've just got a note here. So you followed up with her audiology test. And I said, audiology? What are you talking about? She's like, oh, we've got it scanned here that Remi, failed her newborn hearing screen. She needs to be referred to do like ongoing testing or whatever it is. I was like, oh yeah, they told me not to worry about it. I might just call up in a few months or something. And she was kind of like,
Wow.
she was so lovely. She was like, why don't I make the call right now? If you're here, I'll just call up and we'll book it in together. And I was like, why? Like, I was like, I'm busy. I'm trying to figure out this whole new mum life. Like, is it really that important? And she's like, you know what? So many babies have hearing aids. Like, it's so cute and it's so this. And I was like, hearing aids? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, they told me that she was fine. Anyway, I was kind of like, all right, whatever, like make the appointment. I guess I'll go. And they literally got me in like 2 days later. They were like, oh, this kid like needs to be in now. Cause I think she must have been 6 weeks old or whatever. And I remember it was actually like one of my first times driving. Cause I had a C-section, so you can't drive for 6 weeks or whatever it is. And I went to the appointment like by myself because of COVID. They're like, you have to come by yourself to the hospital. Like, yeah, the appointment goes for 3 hours. I was like, 3 hours? I was like, in what world? I went in being like, I had grommets as a kid and I had them like a couple of times. And I went in genuinely thinking that they were just going to say, oh yeah, like Remi needs grommets. We probably won't do it till she's a little bit older. That was it. So I go into this appointment, you sit there, they're like, yeah, the baby's got to be asleep. And I'm like, oh, like that's so easy. Like you're sitting there rocking and feeding and then they're poking them. And again, when I tell you, Claire, I had no idea. Like I was just sitting there, okay, like I guess this is what you do. You just take your baby to all these funny appointments and that's just what you do. Anyway, 3 hours later, I'm sitting there and the audiologist, I could tell she was like a bit nervous. And she was like, oh, okay, so the results have come back and Remi has a severe hearing loss. And I was like, okay, like, sure. What does that mean? And she's like, okay, so this is a sensorineural hearing loss and blah, blah, blah. And I can't even really remember all the things she was saying, but I just remember her, like, because I was like, okay, well, like, are you going to go get a doctor? Like, what are you doing? And she was like, I don't think you're understanding what I'm telling you. Remi is deaf. And I was like, no, she's not. She's like, okay, so Remi is deaf. That's just who Remi is. I remember her really trying to like obviously get the point across to me. And I just was not comprehending or understanding. And then I just like, it kind of clicked. And I just remember like I was so overwhelmed and I was just sobbing, like can't breathe, like sobbing. Like
We had such similar experiences there, didn't we? And we're on our own, and it's that almost immediate denial. Like there's a shock, but then there's that immediate denial where you just, particularly again, if you go back to the midwives in the hospital just saying to you, it's fine. Like you're just so not prepared to receive that news.
I didn't even know really, Claire, that that's what we were testing for, I guess. And it's just so dumb. Audiology. Like, what did you think they were testing for? I don't know. I generally thought, oh, maybe she needs grommets. Like, that's kind of what I thought the test was for. I couldn't believe that they were telling me that my little perfect baby like couldn't hear me. And I remember she even said to me, and this, like I look back now and I'm like, it's just so nasty. Like I was so overwhelmed, clearly so upset. I was wearing those K9 masks or whatever they're called. And I remember I like took it off because mine was just filled with like tears and it was wet. And she was like, you have to put that mask back on. And I was like, ugh. It's so funny when you're pregnant, the things you care about. And then when you have a baby, the things you actually care about, right? So I had all the things. So I had like this beautiful pram and this little sound machine and I'm sitting there and she's all swallowed up. And I had this sound machine and I'm turning like the lullabies on and I'm turning the like white noise on and I'm sitting there trying to like shh and she's crying and they're trying to tell me. And I remember I was like turning it on and I'm like, shh. And they're like, she can't hear you doing that. And I just was like, ugh. I'm like, what do you mean she can't hear me?
You know what? That's so interesting because, and like, so resonate with that because I remember even like me knowing what I know and all that jazz, that wasn't in my head when I had Frankie. And I still remember the first time I was trying to console him because I would shh a lot with my first.
Yeah, like
I had this realization too, where I was like, oh my goodness, he can't hear me. I can't actually do this. This isn't going to soothe him. And I ended up doing a lot of like tapping and, pushing and putting my hand on the mattress and things like that, because you had to start thinking outside. But that was a moment for me too, where I thought, oh my goodness, I have to change my approach here.
Yeah, and I such a surreal time. And again, looking back, it's so funny how what you know now, you're like, oh, I wish I could go back and just understand a bit deeper in that moment, maybe, because it wouldn't have been so overwhelming. Maybe not overwhelming, it still would have been overwhelming, but intense, maybe. And I remember like getting in the car and I was like, how do I go like call my husband and say our baby's dead? Like, because I have to go deliver that news. I was like, are you going to tell him? Like, how do you go to, and I just remember like I texted him and was like, you have to come home from work. Because what I do, call him at work. I was like, you have to come home. And I just remember like I called my dad, because that is like, I am so close to my mum. And I just remember I couldn't call my mum in that moment because I would have lost it, right? And my dad is very much like, he'll just fix everything. And like, I just remember calling him and I couldn't even talk. And he was like, pull over, don't drive. And I was like, I couldn't even breathe. And he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I was like, Remi's deaf. And he's like, and this is where like love my family and friends so much. And he's like, we'll just get another opinion, And straight away, a lot of my friends and family said the same thing. They're like, are you sure? Like, we need to get another opinion. We don't know that for a fact right now. She's only a baby. We don't know. I look back now and I'm like, we do know. Obviously, he was just trying to like calm me down in the moment while I'm trying to drive. And Remi's probably just screaming in the back, because I don't know about you, but Remi hated the car. She still hates it. But so I just remember I was driving, Remi was screaming. If I remember correctly, it was actually like pouring rain. It was just like the epitome of, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Oh, it was like a very intense day.
When you sort of, I guess, finally got to a point, and I know it can take, for me personally, it took months. Like I was still crying in the shower 6, 8 months later, because I just was still trying to comprehend. But I guess as you moved into that phase of acceptance, I guess would be the right word, what was sort of the biggest challenges for you just navigating that time and sort of, okay, so we're in this, we've accepted this is our journey, cool. What did you start to face just from, I guess, that point moving forward? Because obviously hearing aids and having to go through all those appointments, what did you find to be the most challenging about that time?
Oh, I feel like that's such a tough question, because at that time, I would say the overwhelm of appointments. I still look back at that time and I cannot believe I navigated all of that by myself. At the time, like Remi's dad is so supportive and amazing, but he was working 6 days a week. Obviously, given this news and everything like that, I remember one of the first appointments, one of the specialists, I can't even remember which one it was, sat me down and was like, oh, you're not going back to work. I distinctly remember him saying to me, he was like, the first 5 years of Remi's life are going to be critical. You are not going back to work. I don't necessarily disagree with what he was saying, but he was like, if you want her, no one is going to work harder than you to give her everything, whether that's a bilingual approach, whether that's, an oral approach. He was like, she cannot go to daycare. It's the worst place she can go. And I was like, oh, okay.
I love the idea around that, but it's also not realistic.
I could not believe that this, and I was like, you, a specialist, probably a doctor on, sitting comfortably in his life, is telling me like, at 25 years old, you can't work. I will say, I do feel really lucky in Melbourne. I did feel really supported. I straight away reached out to people, like all these people were reaching out to me, like Next Sense, Aurora, Cochlear Implant Clinic, Hearing Australia, like everyone was reaching out. It just was overwhelming, like beyond. Then you're looking at MRIs, and all of this has to be done in such a short period of time. So they're like, yep, you're in 2 days time, you're in 3 days time, you're in next week. And I remember like just my calendar was just insane. And people would say to me, like, I remember going to my mother's group, who like I love, and I'm still close with my mother's group now. And I just remember sitting there sometimes listening to them being like, oh, like a bit bored at home, or whatever it was. And I was just like, what do you mean at home? I was like, I'd love to spend a day at home, just with no appointments, no like intervention. The first 6 months, I would just say the overwhelm of appointments. And again, I look back now and I wish I understood a bit better, because there's so many things that I could have said no to. But at the time, because I was so naive, I just was like taking everything. I was clinging on to anything I could. If somebody told me this could benefit Remi, I was there. I was like, I'll be there, whatever time. This is what she needs. Okay, we're there. She needs hearing aids. Got it. We'll be there every 2 weeks getting her new molds done. She might need a cochlear. We've got to test her 18 times because she's a gray area or whatever it is. Yep, I'll be there. I don't want to make the wrong decision. So like I'll do an extra test. I don't mind. I remember even to the point, I look back now, the speech therapy. She was 3 months old when she started speech therapy, and they were like fortnightly appointments. Or I think it even started weekly. And I said, please, can we go to fortnightly? Mate, I was fighting for my life with all these appointments. And then you're sitting there telling me that this is a priority. If you don't take her to speech therapy right now, like, I'm going to throw a whole development off track. I just remember, like, I look back now and I'm like, oh.
Oh, we talk about this a lot, actually. I think we have as well, where we have this, there is like this need or this urge that parents feel that they have to always be going to every appointment, and that all of these appointments are always important. And sometimes we actually have to step back and let our kids just be deaf kids and have that space, because as you said, the overwhelm of appointments doesn't end. And I think it sort of leads me to something I did want to talk to you about, particularly because I think, and from our conversations, you have really, what I like to say, has built your advocacy muscle. So the episode I did before this one is all about building that advocacy muscle. And I think that you're a really amazing example of that. As someone who, prior to having Remi, you didn't have to really advocate, obviously, for anything in that sort of way. And then having her, you had to step into this role that was new for you. And there was discomfort, there was, making mistakes, there was having to learn, as you said, you put all your trust at the beginning and just, what every medical specialist says is true. Even with the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme that we have in Australia, all of that stuff, I've just seen you grow and bloom into this beautiful advocacy flower. And I would love to just, I guess, talk about that a little bit, and just how that journey has been for you, from moving, I guess, from that space where you haven't had to advocate as much to really it being part of your everyday.
I love that. I love that you've noticed that about me. Thank you. What a compliment. I cannot express how important it is to learn how to advocate. I will say to anyone in any conversation now, whether your child is deaf, whether they are hearing, whether they whatever, if you walk into a room and you're with specialists, you need to know, like, I just used to, I guess, look at these specialists, whatever, and think that they knew more than me. And what I took something so important away from your boot camp, Claire, which amazing. Anyone who has a deaf child, I think that should be the first thing that they need to do. I don't think you need to be taking your 2-month-old baby to speech therapy. I think you need to be doing a boot camp like that. That was so much more, that would have been so much more crucial at that point of having a better understanding than anything else. Oh. And for me now, I really understand no one knows my child better than me. No, I won't walk in a room anymore without all the knowledge and support. So if I'm going to, for example, a speech therapy session, whatever, I'm researching. I've got all the information. I know what's expected of my child, but I also know what my goals are from my family and what I want to get out of it. Remi is not here to fit in, to jump through all these hoops for you. It is, you're here to give us the tools to give her the best life possible at the end of the day. So I want to know what you can do for me, whatever type of specialist you are. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing for me in this moment? It's no longer, I guess, about, oh, well, I'm going because they told me to go and they told me this. I'm like, no. What am I getting out of it? Like, what's my daughter getting out of this? How are you helping her? And that, I feel like, is such a big thing. And also, I feel like the biggest thing is understanding nobody knows her better than me. Nobody knows her wants, needs, whatever better than I do. So I don't care if you're the smartest doctor in the world, it's still my child, and my opinion and my point of view is equal to whatever your opinion is. It's not less than.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And I think so many great nuggets there. And I feel as well like it's that thing where you can come across a specialist who is really respectful in their approach, right? And that we really really value what they're giving us and that information, because they have that knowledge in regards to, I guess, the mechanics of how deafness works, or whatever their area might be, or how language development works and things like that. But as you said, like, so often the hearing parent is sort of told to sit in the corner and just listen, and this is how these things are going to go, and this is how we do things here. And I think that that is the trap we can't get into, where it's like, no, hang on, you're leading this meeting, I'm really interested to know what you have to contribute, but please do not silence me. Please don't say that what I'm saying isn't relevant, because it's family centered. That is what should be happening. And the mother or the father or the parent, whoever's caring for that child, that voice and that message and that philosophy that you hold holds the most weight in that room, and that has to be where everything centralizes around. I just think what you said there is beautiful, so good. And how do you feel now going into, so I can, for me, starting when I first went into advocacy meetings for Frank, I would just be so terrified, because I was such a people pleaser before I sort of came into this space. And now I don't feel that way. I feel very, very comfortable and confident in the meetings that I have. Do you feel you've gotten to that point yourself since going through this journey with Remi?
Yeah, I honestly do. I would say the last, even like as far as the last 6 months, have really like, I would say I've leveled up in a sense of like, I love what you say when you say, I'm in control of this meeting. I'm driving the bus or whatever. Welcome to hop on and join and be a part of it. But I will kick you off as fast as you can hop on if you are not contributing to what Remi needs or what's in her best interest. And yeah, I just feel like in the last 6 months, I'm no longer afraid. I feel like the biggest thing is intimidation. I used to really think, well, I'm not an expert. Like I am a first-time mum. I have no medical background. So I'm like, who am I to make these choices or do these things? But now I'm like, well, no, it is my decision. It is my choice. I am Remi's best advocate. She's not going to have, like, nobody else is going to stand up and make more noise in a room than me. And if I stand by and I just sit there and let these conversations happen, then how do I expect to get what I think is best for Remi out of it? Because there was a certain point, I would say the first 12 months of Remi's intervention, I did 100% let it be led by everyone. And it got to 12 months in, and this is probably when I first met you, Claire, or we first started our sessions. And I loved hearing your point of view. And I was like, what the heck? How am I getting all this information from you? And I'm going on this totally different journey with her whole intervention team. And that's not the path that I want to go down. And I remember you sort of saying to me, we can change it. And I was like, oh, but like, who am I to change it? She was like, it's Remi's journey. You change it. And she's like, and then if you want to change it back, you can. And that was such an important thing for me to understand, because I was also always nervous of every decision that I made, that was it. And, you make that decision and then I've ruined her life if I make the wrong one, right? And understanding that with all children, not just deaf children, your journey changes. So like, if something's not working, you go back to it, or you go back to what was working. And then if that's not working, you can change it again, and you can change it again, and you can change it again. And there's no rules. Even with having a deaf child, I understand that there is, a pathway that they do push, but no child sits there and follows that to a T. And I would almost go as far to say Remi is almost a pretty straightforward case, and we are a pretty straightforward journey, but I don't accept that. Remi is still her own individual person, and she deserves her own individual support plan. She deserves her own individual support team. She doesn't deserve just this plain whatever experience.
Even so, she's, you talk about these decisions, and one of the big decisions, and we'll briefly chat on this now, I think, because it's important, and there's going to be so many families who will resonate with this, but you made the decision, as did we, to implant Remi on one side. So we both have bimodal kids, not bimodal bilingual. Language-wise, we have bimodal kids, as in they both have one hearing aid and one cochlear implant. And we always discuss this journey with the bimodal kid, how we actually have to go to double appointments. And I remember you actually giving me that insight before we implanted Frank, and me thinking, oh, I never thought about that. We have to go
never thought about that point of view. Yep.
And I guess Yeah, it is wild. We do have to go to double appointments, but wouldn't have it any other way. I did want you to just, I guess, lightly touch on that experience and going through the implantation decision and how that all sort of went down.
I will say again, I have such a different opinion about it now versus than what I did back then. I was very much guided by everybody else, and it wasn't necessarily making a decision. I understand that cochlear implants can be controversial and some people don't have good experience, but I love, love, love what has brought for my daughter. Like she loves her implant at 2.5 years old. She loves it. You know, we've got the stickers and she dresses it up and she's proud of it. So I am proud of where we are. I just guess I would have made the decision differently because I very much let it be led. I the decision was kind of made really early on. It was actually quite interesting. I remember when Remi, so she was about 6 weeks old when she was first diagnosed, and they like to do an MRI before the kids are like 3 months old so then they don't have to sedate them. And Remi was literally 3 months old the day she got her MRI. And I remember, oh, like it was awful. She wouldn't go to sleep. And thank God the nurse at the hospital was so understanding and amazing because I was just sobbing because I was like, please don't sedate my baby. Because the doctor came in and was like, oh, we'll just sedate her. It's fine. And I was like, please don't sedate my baby. Like, I don't want to do that. And the nurse was like, you know what? Just you can walk the halls as long if you're here for 3 hours, as long as you don't mind. Like, you know, you just as soon as you get the baby to sleep, we'll slot her in. Like, we'll just move things around. And she was so lovely. And anyway, so they did the MRI, came back all good. And then I remember you have to go see an ENT. And this was a different ENT who we'd already seen and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, yeah. So she'll just get implanted and blah, blah, blah. She'll be right. And I said, excuse me? Like, oh, well, yeah. So she'll just get a cochlear implant. Like, obviously, given her level of hearing loss, like, she'll just get a cochlear implant. And I was like, what? And I just started sobbing. And he was like, why are you crying? Like, what's going on? And I was like, you just told me my baby needs this big surgery. And, you know, and he was like, oh, hasn't anybody like had that conversation with you yet? And I said, oh, she's 3 months old. What do you mean? And he was like, oh, sorry. And I think he immediately it was interesting because I said, like, you've just told me this life-changing news and you've just made that assumption and you haven't even talked to me about options or anything like that. And I think hopefully he will walk away from that appointment and never do that again because I sat in there for 30 minutes and I guess it was probably supposed to be a 10-minute appointment. Just being like asking him questions. And he was like, oh, sorry, you have to ask the cochlear implant team and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you just told me. You just made that decision. You just told me. And he was probably sitting there like, oh, crap, I wish I didn't do that. But yeah, and I remember like we kind of went to the cochlear implant clinic and it was back and forth for a while. They were kind of like she would test and they would say, oh, yeah. And then she would test again and they would say, oh, maybe no. And then yes, and then no. And it was so overwhelming because I was trying to wrap my head around my child being deaf and my daughter having hearing aids. And then they were trying to tell me, oh, you possibly have this looming big surgery date, but we don't know yet. And oh, like it was just wild. I wish I would have lent in more to the deaf community at that time. I wasn't really connected with anyone or anything like that. So the only people I was relying on was the cochlear implant team, like her speech therapist and things like that, who were all very supportive and were all like, yes, cochlear implant clinic is the way to go, blah, blah, blah. But I just wish I could have got, you know, spoken to people with cochlear implants, you know, had those sorts of conversations. I think that would have been so much more helpful and just would have made me feel better about the decision because I was very nervous.
I think it's that element that still the medical field are not getting is
Yeah.
that we need to be bringing deaf people in at the point of diagnosis
Yeah.
and at the point of these life-changing decisions because
Yeah.
they are literally living with these decisions. And I think that's so true. I was going to say, did anyone link you in the deaf community
No.
prior to implantation? And that, like for me, when we announced Frankie's obviously quite well known in the deaf community. And so when we announced that he was implanted, there was a mixed bag of, feedback going on. But before we implanted him, I literally contacted like I would say 5 or 6 of my closest deaf friends and just unloaded on them and asked them all the questions and just said, what do you reckon? What are you thinking? I got
Yeah.
so much lived experience before we made that decision. And then obviously Frankie was really keen for it too. So it was a lot more, we just felt much more supported. But I always just think, wow, like that not being even a thought
Priority.
process for people, it honestly blows my mind that that happens. But I wish you had that too. But it sounds like you have made up for it.
Yes, I feel like, again, that's what I mean is now I have such a, it's not that I would go back and change it. It's just that I wish I could have gone about the decision differently because I didn't even, like, I didn't understand as well. And it's even interesting, like, I had a conversation with her team recently about possibly implanting her next year, like, so she'd be bilateral. And immediately I'm like, I made it very clear. And I have an amazing speechie at the Cochlear implant team, and she is fantastic. And I love her, and she's so respectful. It was actually like, it sort of came from the audiologist who, again, has always been great, whatever. But it was such a direct and nothing approach about Remi's pronunciation. And I said, well, she's 2.5. I don't think this is a conversation to have right now. More than happy to revisit it later down the track, but I'm not going to hold my 2.5-year-old to a standard of her hearing peers when you've seen her for 3 minutes and you made that assumption of like, and I said, she's just had a hearing test, which means she doesn't even qualify for an implant on that side. And then the response was, oh, yeah, but once she turns 3, we no longer need the hearing test. It'll go off like more like her language and stuff like that. And I said, well, it's not her language, it's her speech. That's what you're talking about. Because if you want to go for Auslan, like it's fine. And I said, we can address, I just kind of left it as like, we can address it at a later date. But just to make a comment like of, oh yeah, we'll just implant her again. And I was like, no, you will not be just throwing that at me. I'm not saying it's the answer's no, but I'm just saying it's a much bigger conversation.
And once again, it's this opinion that people seem to have, all this presumption that we want the same thing they want. And they're like, well, wouldn't you want your child to have two? Wouldn't you want them to have the ABC? Wouldn't you want them to be able to pronounce their S's or their T's? And it's like, well, maybe that's not my goal for them to have perfect speech or be going down this route, whatever it might be. And this is a theme that's been on social media a bit at the moment, where it's like people just can't get their head around that may not be the priority for some families, where it's like, no, we want them to have language and to be able to communicate and have both access to both worlds, but that perfect hearing level speech that everyone seems to want our kids to strive for may not be the goal for the family. And it comes back to the family and what is actually the big picture goal there and what they want for their child. And I think you've been really good at we do a lot of that work in the boot camp, don't we, around that vision and that what is the goal and the true north and the guiding principles we want for our child. And we're not going to waver from that. We're not going to go down these other rabbit holes.
And that 100%, Claire, like in the boot camp, that really made me understand too, when you say find your true north, what is your goal? Because if you don't have a strong like sense of this is what I want for my daughter or, my child, then you're not going to get it, because nobody is going to help you get it unless you're the one saying, this is what I want, this is what I need. And my biggest thing coming from that, even when it comes to her speech and stuff like that, at 2.5, I'm like, are you spending time in the real world? I would love, love, love to have, and like, I have a lot of like 2.5-year-olds in my life, maybe that's where it comes from. Like I spend a lot of time with a lot of other 2.5-year-olds, and I'm like, I think you're wrong. I think you are wrong. If we held our hearing kids to this standard, mate, there'd be less than 50% would be meeting it. Are you going into every daycare and testing every child and saying, if their kid doesn't meet this thing, then the conversation is, you need to be in speech therapy, you need to be in early intervention, you need this? Absolutely not. If someone's child has a speech delay or if someone's child has a developmental delay of some sort, there's no sitting there berating the parents saying, do this, do this, do this. But for whatever reason, they think that when you have a deaf child, oh, you know what? She can't pronounce at 2.5. So like, maybe we'll just implant her again. And I think that a part of that comes from, I think, and Claire, we've sort of touched on that. I feel really the bimodal children, which I didn't ever think was a controversial thing. It actually, now that I seem to be getting a little bit more deeper, people don't want to see bimodal kids for whatever reason. But when you speak to people within the community who are bimodal, they only have positive things to say. So why would I change that when we're not at that level yet. Like, I just think it's wild. It's wild to
And
me.
it comes back to that you've engaged with deaf people. You've actually asked bimodal adults, what do you think? Because I think they're the source in which we need to be getting a lot of our information from.
100%.
I wanted to finish because we're going to have to wrap up. Although we could just chat all day, as you know. But I think to end, because you're just so passionate, you're such a great advocate. You've just got, even in, Remi's short life, you have lived and you've got a lot, of advice that you can be giving new parents on the journey. There could be someone today, right now, accessing this podcast who's just found out their little bub is deaf. And we know how deeply emotional that time is. I guess I would love you to just share some parting wisdom in regards to what advice you think parents is good for them to know at that point where they're just finding out their child is deaf, and what do you think is the best advice for them at that point?
I feel like the biggest thing that was so helpful to me was, again, like you said, connecting within the deaf community. Before Remi, I had never met another deaf person. I didn't have deaf friends. I didn't have deaf family. Like, I didn't have anyone like that. And so I guess the fear of the unknown, that's, I guess, where the grief, I think, comes from initially. Because now I'm like, oh, not a big deal, right? But at the time, it's like, because it's so different to your experience. Like, I think that's where it really hits your heart a little bit. You look at your baby and you're like, but that's not the same as me. I can't relate. Like, we as hearing people could never relate to what it must be like to be deaf. And that's why I think there's so much like fear around that. But it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. There's like this poem, and I think I remember somebody like gave it to me, and it's like called Welcome to Holland. I don't know if you've heard that one.
No, I
It
haven't.
talks about, it's like this beautiful poem, and it talks about how when you have a baby and it's like you've planned a trip to Italy and you're so excited to go to Italy and you've read all the books and you know where you're going and you're doing, like, you've got all the places and you've been learning the language and you're so excited, and you get on the plane and you get there and you hop off and they're like, oh, you're in Holland. And you're like, Holland? What do you mean? I'm supposed to be in Italy. And they're like, no, you're in Holland. That's where you are. This is where you are. So off you hop. And you have to learn the language and you have to change your whole mindset around. But then once you accept that, you look around and you're like, Holland is beautiful. There's tulips and there's windmills and this is an amazing place to be. It's just different than what you expected. And that to me was so helpful, because I was like, it's not that I was sad necessarily about Remi being deaf. It's just that I was sad about, I didn't understand, and it was different. It was a different experience.
Oh, that's honestly, I'm going to link that poem in the show notes because I think that sounds so beautiful, and I think would be a really nice support for parents who are going through the journey at the moment.
You surround yourself with like other people who are like in the same situation. Like, I have been so lucky. I have two of, like, I would say my closest friends now who have deaf children. And like Caitlin, like, love you, Caitlin. I'm sure she'll be listening. We just are so connected because we have this shared lived experience. And like, I think that is so crucial as well. Join the Facebook groups, do the boot camp, do all the things, just put yourself around people who are in the same shoes. And even if you have different goals and things like that, that's okay, because it's people who still understand you. And that, I think, again, is so helpful.
I love that. So, so true, and so important that we connect with people who are on the same journey. And I love as well, because parents don't judge other parents. Like, if we've got different philosophies, that's okay. That's just something that innately that we don't do, because we all know we're in the trenches together and we're all just doing our best. And I think that's a really beautiful way to end this podcast today. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to you, Keely, for being here. You're incredible. You have just imparted so much more wisdom than I think you even know. I can't wait for this to air because I know it's going to help so many people, and I really just appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.